Hello, and welcome to the first video in a making of series where I tackle Ahsoka Tano's Season 7 Siege of Mandalore costume! This is hopefully going to be a 3-part series. In this video, I'm going to focus on how I made the tunic. The second video will be all about making the armor, and the third video will be all about the headpiece. This series won't be so much a structured tutorial as more of a construction log, a clog, if you will. But I'm still adding as many resources and tips as I can for anybody else who is also planning on making this costume, because I can assure you, I made many mistakes, so you don't have to. I started out by piecing together this pattern I bought from Fulcrum Creations on Etsy, and I found it to be a really great starting point. For reference, I am 5'5", 110 pounds, and I cut out a size medium. I definitely could have gotten away with cutting it as a small, but I usually like to make my patterns just a bit larger and adjust as I go, since usually my measurements are kind of all over the place. Then I transferred the pattern to muslin so I could make a quick mock-up and make some adjustments. Okay, so here is where we're at with the mock-up. I did end up adding a bit of a dart here at the armpit, and I kind of reworked this whole thing so that it has more of like that cap sleeve look. I also took up the bottom by like 2 inches, so I think it was just a little too long. And I also added a little bit to the side here because that was not fitting. Once I was happy with everything, I transferred my now muslin pattern onto the stretchy navy fabric I'd been hoarding since 2016, with full intentions on using it for something that I do not remember and definitely doesn't matter now. I started by sewing the darts into place, and this is where I ran into my first big conundrum. So I am currently experiencing quite a conundrum. I've sewn the darts, but now I don't really know what else to do. I have 2 options. I can either attach all the vinyl details before I sew the whole dress together, or after I do the whole dress. And if I do it before, if I make a mistake, I don't have to redo the whole dress. But then there's also the chance that none of the lines will match up, especially on the sides and the back when I sew it all together. If I put on the vinyl after I sewed the whole dress together, if I mess up, I'll have to re-sew the whole dress. But it would probably be easier to match up all the lines. I don't really know where to go from here. Just gonna bring it. We're doing it live.
Do it live!
Spoiler alert, I decided to finish the dress, just in time for yet another crisis. So last night I couldn't go to sleep because all I could think about was how I was going to make this dress. And I decided that I really wanted to put some lining in it because I feel like it will just look and feel nicer. Anyway, so I went to Walmart today and I was on the hunt for some cheap lining fabric because I know that Walmart has a great selection, honestly. Anyway, I was looking for something nice and light that was also navy blue that I could, and I ended up finding this, which is like a nice super light polyester, and it's kind of got like a nice sheen to it, which got me to thinking, what if I use that as the outer fabric? Like, the more I look at it, the nicer it looks to me. And also the fact that it was $1.97 a yard, it just... I mean, technically I know I paid more for this than I did with the other one, because the other one was free, because I just had it. But I did pay for that at some point too. I have no idea how much, but I know it wasn't $1.97. So I think it'll all come down to whether the vinyl will stick to that fabric or if it'll just like melt right through. I went ahead and did a quick test on the Walmart fabric, and the vinyl did indeed stick and stretch just as it should. So it was then time to repeat the entire dressmaking process onto this fabric. And now, if you would so kindly allow me.
I'm about to sing the song.
Press, press, press your seams gently as you sew. Iron them, iron them, iron them, iron them, or else what you make is going to be really ugly and it's going to be all your fault. Okay, so I have the main fabric and the lining fabric all sewn and pinned together so that I can then sew them together. Honestly, I'm just kind of in awe of how well all of this matched up, because that just never happens. Also, if you remember what I said about using the lining fabric as the main fabric, forget I ever said that. But I'll probably keep that part of the video in as an incentive to go to Walmart and get yourself some $1.97 fabric. So now that my crises were over and I was blissfully unaware of what was to come, I repatterned the collar and then transferred it onto the main fabric, also making sure to cut out a piece of lightweight interfacing to attach to the outer collar layer. Once the collar was all sewn and pressed, I sandwiched it between the two fabrics and sewed it into place. I also finished hemming the sleeves by hand. And after putting in the zipper, I had a finished dress, which meant it was time to see if finishing the dress before ironing on the vinyl was indeed the right choice. In total, I ended up using 3 rolls of the Sizer brand stretch heat transfer vinyl in silver. I knew I wanted to have my vinyl cutter do all the work for this, but since I wanted to start off with the shoulder caps, I figured I'd have a little more control if I patterned them out of fabric first and then cut them out of the vinyl myself. I found it was a lot easier to put the dress on the mannequin and iron it on directly than to lay it flat and possibly mess up the placement. Moment of truth. Oh my god. That is so freaking cool. What? Honestly, I can't believe this worked. And I can't believe how good it looks. What? Ooh! Moving on to the front design, I put the dress on and drew the design roughly with some chalk. That way I could lay it flat and take some measurements. I then took to Photoshop, where I traced out the design from a reference photo and scaled it to the exact measurements I drew out. I printed the design out multiple times and taped it onto the dress to make sure it looked right, and once I was happy with it, I let my vinyl cutter do all the hard work from here. I had marked along the shoulders from when I tried out the paper template so that I knew where to align everything before ironing, but it still took a lot longer than I'd like to admit, and what you can't see is me sweating profusely the entire time. And now that one nightmare was over, it was time to move on to the next. Since the bottom design depends a lot on the placement of her armor and her buckle, I made a super quick template out of paper so I could measure the start of the waistline, the width between these two lines, how far down these vertical lines go, and how high to make this triangle. I then did the same general design process as the top, printed out multiple paper test patterns, and let my cutter do the rest. I also repeated this for the back design and the collar as well. So my original plan was to have the bottom design cut out in half, and that way I could iron both halves and just join them in the middle. However, this ended up being a lot more difficult than I imagined, so I did have to cut the bottom triangle out separately and join that separately. It was very stressful trying to align everything exactly right, but it was the better decision in the end. Okay, let me just pause right here. Look at this frame. Does this not look perfectly even to you? I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Cut the cameras. Dead ass.
Well, this has been a chaotic, sometimes stressful, oftentimes nightmare-inducing, yet overall wonderful learning experience. All jokes aside, it wasn't really that bad. I'm actually pretty surprised it took me a little less than a week to get everything done. In hindsight, there are so many things I wish I would have done differently, but considering this was my first time ever attempting anything like this, I think I did pretty good. If you are also a big Ahsoka fan, you'll probably notice I did leave out a few details. I did not even bother with the vinyl around her collar. At that point, I was just so done. I am probably going to redo the back. I know nobody's gonna see it, nobody's gonna care, but I care, and I see it. I will keep you updated on that if that happens. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are also making this costume, I hope it helped you in some way. And if you're not, I hope you still learned something useful, like maybe what not to do. If you'd like to continue watching this series, I will be having a part 2 up sometime, so stay tuned for that, where I will be tackling the armor. Anyway, I'm so glad this is over. Bye!